So now we're talking about the Lotus Sutra, which is also known as the Dharma Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is probably one of the most important sutras in Chinese and Japanese Buddhism. And a sutra is similar to like a Judeo-Christian perspective, like scripture. But one of the differences in Buddhism, there's over 64,000 of them. And they're all over the place. And they're used by different traditions to record or expand on the teachings of the Buddha. Interesting too, the word sutra also means like a thread that you weave with. So it's the weaving together of these teachings and these experiences by followers of the Buddha. So in this sutra, the Lotus Sutra, in chapter 20, it tells a very specific story. It's one of my favorite stories. It's an ancient story about a Bodhisattva monk named Sada Kanabuta, or never disparaging Bodhisattva. So why was he given this name? Because he paid respect to everyone he saw. For him, practicing the Buddha way was not about devoting his time to religious practices, such as chanting or receiving the sutras or meditation, but it was simply by devoting his time to simple and direct experience with other people and paying respect to everyone. His was what we would call a gassho practice, a bowing practice, and it would be directed to all beings. What he would say to them would be this simple phrase. He would go up to them and he would bow and say, I would never despise or disrespect you, because one day you will be a Buddha. And you do that to everybody. So much so that people thought he was kind of crazy. He's going around bowing to people. People, are you bowing? Who are you? What do you do? What? Get away from me. Stop it. Stop it. Like, you too will be a Buddhist. And the story goes on that in the traditional story, he would be saying this to lay people and monks and saying they'd be coming around, and a lot of them didn't like it. And they'd start pushing him away or mocking him or laughing at him, thinking that there was something not right in this guy's life. And somebody even gets so mad that they get really pissed off and start beating him. But he was amazing because he wouldn't let that get to him. When they would start throwing stuff at him, he'd just get a distance far enough away so the rocks and sticks they were throwing at couldn't reach him. And he'd just smile and turn at him and go, I would never disparage you or despise you, because someday you too will be a Buddha. As they're throwing rocks at him. Right? I just love that. I love that patience, that generosity, and that manifestation of that inner nature of all people. For him, it wasn't just a philosophical idea. It was something he genuinely believed enough to go up to people and look them in the face with that honor and respect, no matter what they were doing. I mean, most of us, if we're saying that to somebody, go, you know something, you're going to be a Buddha, they're going to go, well, screw you. And you go, well, screw you too. And we wouldn't want to talk to him, we want to deal with him. Man, do you believe that guy? He's trying to be nice. But look at him. Look at her. Calling me names. The story goes on to say that he did not get to anger. Instead, each time he spoke the same words, you are to become Buddhas. And they would say again, we need no such false predictions. And some would attack him and beat him with clubs. And still, while escaping from these people, he continued to call out to them, almost singing, I would never disparage you, for you are all certain to become Buddhas. Thinking about our own lives and thinking about those who angry us, how many of us are like those who don't like to be told how good we are, or what kind of potential we have? How many of us cast those away from us or push those away from us keep them at arm's length because they're saying something about us that we don't believe ourselves because of shame or self-hatred. Now, this is a myth, but it's more than just that. Never Disparaging Bodhisattva saw that all people have Buddha nature. That they inherently possess the nature to become a Buddha. The practice he engaged in is called Raihai-gyo, or bowing in reverence. Never Disparaging Bodhisattva represents the true spirit of the Bodhisattva. Those who seek after all those who are suffering to free them from their suffering. His is a ritual that we should all perform in daily life. The ritual practice of treating others, no matter who they are or what they do, with respect. Bowing as a practice. As you see, for those who've never been to a Buddhist group before, we do a lot of this. We do a lot of bowing. And that's not because someone is higher than us or someone is lower than us. It's because we're acknowledging the Buddha nature in each of us. So bowing in a Buddhist context is a very profound and important practice. As Gyome Sensei, our founding teacher, says, Gasho or bowing starts in each individual's mind, the mind where we are able to respect all others. Shunryu Suzuki, the founder of the San Francisco Sensei, said, when you bow to Buddha, you should have no idea of Buddha. You should become one with Buddha. You are already Buddha himself. When you become one with Buddha, one with everything that exists, you find the true meaning of being. When you forget all your dualistic ideas, everything becomes your teacher. And everything can be an object of devotion. In other words, the one who bows and the one who is bowed to, there is no difference. They are the same. This teaching illuminates that which is most intimate in our life right now. As Sensei Ego Yoku from the Los Angeles Zen Center teaches, on a very personal level, this story is about what we do and who we regard as the other. Do I regard someone or of a different ethnic background, gender preference, political party or profession, or even a different Buddhist group as the other? I think he makes a really good point. Our culture, our country right now is infected with the idea of other. Other as enemy, other as different, other as wrong, other as morally bad. We have an opportunity when we think about others, not never disparaging Bodhisattva, to look at our own selves and see how we see the other. How am I seeing the other? We want to examine our assumptions of this whole idea of otherness, because ultimately this idea of otherness is nothing more than a delusion, a misperception. And when we think about the other, if we think about those things that we think are so different from us, so different, maybe even our enemies or the perpetrators in our lives, can we, in our practice, begin to see them the way never disparaging Bodhisattva does? I would say I have a long to go. But I'm working on it. I aspire to it. When in Buddhist practice, we call it practice. We don't call it Buddhist perfect. I am not saying that tomorrow or today when you leave, you need to start bowing to the people who've hurt you in your life. Or that you have to bow to that person who is threatening your life. But the practice is that someday we can get there, that we can actually eliminate that perception, that misperception of other. That we can see the other who hurts us is hurting us. Hurt people hurt other people. And also a hurt person can also be a whole and healthy person. That they too can be a Buddha. Sensei goes on to say, it's not that the other does not exist. They exist. As the Bodhisattva never disparaging experience, people did not like him. People abused him and hurt him because they didn't really hear what he had to say. That they had inherent value and worth. Now, when we think of never disparaging Bodhisattva, saying to everybody, I vouch for you because I would never disparage you because you're going to be a Buddha. Let's turn that around and put a mirror in front of ourselves. And can we do the same thing to ourselves? Can we stand in front of a mirror and bow to ourselves and say, I would never disparage you, I would never disrespect you because you too will be a Buddha. This practice goes both directions. And I would say for some of us, it might even be easier to look at someone else and not disparage them and bow to them and say they will be a Buddha. But if we look in the mirror, that same practice now becomes so much more difficult. As the Bodhisattva never disparaging experiences, people can be cruel, abusive, and hateful. And yet he did not turn away from the darkness. He did not turn away from the darkness. Because inherent in the darkness is light. He turned towards it and proclaimed, you too will become a Buddha. And these were those who were stoning him and hurting him and denouncing him. Sakyamuni, in delivering this teaching, says that they are right here now practicing the way. Can you and me practice the way by just seeing the Buddhahood, the Buddha nature, the Buddha-ness in all beings? And from a Pure Land perspective, there is a famous koan that says, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" And the classic response is "mu," which means empty. But from a Pure Land perspective, why stop at a dog? All things have Buddha nature. All things. We can bow at all things and say, I would never disrespect you or disparage you because someday you too will be a Buddha. So we don't want to disparage others. We don't want to disparage ourselves, but try to realize each other's efforts in this world of being human. Being foolish human beings. We are all groping around in the dark, and we hope that others will help light our way, as we might light the way of others. As Byomi Sensei teaches, we gasho, we bow to one another to remind ourselves that we were all potential Buddhas. It might seem kind of weird, but you can bow to your dog, bow to your cat, bow to your goldfish. I've bowed to many a tree. They're amazing bodhisattvas. They teach so much. I love this teaching by Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh is a very specific thing about never disparaging bodhisattvas. He says, this is the Bodhisattva who says, I would never dare despise anyone. And he is also everywhere. Even if someone does not seem to have the ability to be awakened, he sees that within everyone there is that capacity. Never disparaging Bodhisattva helps everyone to have self-confidence and remove any feelings of inferiority. This kind of complex paralyzes people. Never Disparaging Bodhisattva's specialty is to be in touch and water the seeds of awakened mind, or the mind of love in us. This Bodhisattva is not just a person of the Lotus Sutra, but can be found right here in our society in many different guises. We have to recognize the Bodhisattva, never disparaging, who is around us in flesh and bone. We do not worship imagined or mythological figures. Bodhisattvas are not figures from the past living up in the clouds. The Bodhisattva is a real person who are filled with love and determination. When we can understand someone else's suffering and feel love for him or her, we are in touch with the Bodhisattva of never disparaging within ourselves. So let's go ahead and let's end this talk with two things. The first one is an affirmation. So this is a new affirmation. A never disparaging Bodhisattva aspiration. That we may cultivate that same spirit. Today, we as a Sangha aspire to awaken the never disparaging Bodhisattva in ourselves.
Desire to learn the way of never disparaging progress, name, and unity. With great respect, we say to all you meet, you are someone great about you. You have Buddha nature. We see this in you. We will look with a wise, compassionate gaze, so we will be able to hold up a mirror where others can see their ultimate nature reflected. We will remind people who feel worthless that they too are a precious wonder of life. We will water only the positive seeds in myself and others, so my thoughts, words, and actions can encourage confidence and self-acceptance in all of us, in our children, in our loved ones, and in everyone we meet. Inspired by the knowledge that everyone is enough, we will practice joy, patience, and ruthlessness, so we can liberate ourselves from ignorance and misunderstanding, and offer freedom, peace, and joy to myself, to others, to our society, and to all species. Now, when we end this.
So what does the teaching of never disparaging Bodhisattva, what does it inspire in you? What thoughts come up? What feelings come up? And would you agree it's easier to say that about someone else than to say it about yourself? Yes.
There's a really good Buddhist documentary on YouTube. I think BBC, Richard Gere narrates it. Love it. There's a poet in it, and she has a practice where I think she's in like traffic or something. She'll look at people and she'll be like, Buddha? Buddha? Buddha. I've done it for like a minute and a half before I'm like, asshole, blinker. I got like a minute and a half. It's a good start.
Hey, a minute and a half is good. Good. Now if you go two, you're progressing. Remember, Buddha's practice, not Buddha's perfect. Oh yeah. And the best place to practice that is driving. Road rage. And I have tried to do that. Try to ballot people that cut me off. But half the time I'm just being a smartass, and they know it. But my motivations are not pure. It's just a nicer way than flipping them off. But if you really can do it, if you really mean it, I'm telling you, it's transformational. And not for the person you're bowing to, but for yourself. Because it changes your relationship to the other. Never disparaging Bodhisattva was never worried about outcome. We heard that earlier, being attached to the outcome. He did what he did because he believed it. It was who he was. was his practice. I'm sure there were times when he said, this is bullshit. But he still did it. Persistence and belief and faith. Because he's going for that confidence in what he's doing, in a transformative aspect of it. You know, in the traditional stories, it is said that Never Disparaging Bodhisattva was an incarnation of the Buddha before he was born. Which would make sense of a Buddha who wanted to bring awakening to everybody. That he would see everybody. Everybody. Regardless of race, gender, creed. Everybody as having that potential to become awakened. Yeah.
I spent a large portion of time in the airport yesterday, especially in JFK, with black people. And it sort of reflects to me, you know, the more that I think about how Buddha-like I'm able or see other people as less Buddha-like, it's a clear reflection of kind of how I see myself. And so I feel like that just makes me think of like, oh, you have to start somewhere. If I just thought to all those people standing in the way of the aisle, just that you also need to do that. Much more fun.
Well, and there is something about that mind. I mean, we see the world as we are. We don't see the world as it is. Right? So if we can develop that practice where we see the world as Buddhas, then we start living in the world of Buddhas. If we see the world as just a bunch of assholes or a bunch of others, they're so different from me and not me, then we live in this horribly lonely world. We travel amongst so many people living in solitary confinement. What's the old saying? The worst loneliness is the loneliness among other people. So part of this practice is opening up that the other now becomes diffuse as a concept. It doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean we don't practice stupid compassion. We're saying, oh, my husband or my wife is beating me, but she'll be a Buddhist someday, so I'm going to stay and take it. Screw that. That's not what this is about. Our minds find a whole bunch of ways to twist things up. Right? But this is just a general perception of the world. And this is where Mahayana Buddhism, the big vehicle Buddhism, is a little different because it sees everything as potential Buddhas. I mean, even down to grass and the trees, the leaves. Everything living is a potential Buddha. I love that. I read in the Sutra somewhere that every atom is a Buddha sitting in the middle of the atom. I love that. From a poetic sense, that's beautiful. That everything is made up of Buddhas. Awakened beings. There are very cells, I mean atoms of our very cells, have little Buddhas sitting samadhi within our bodies. And that's what we're made of. We're made of this Buddha essence. And I think when we have a hard time accepting that for ourselves or looking in the mirror and saying, you too will be a Buddha, I think the practice of seeing other people as Buddhas, especially those that may not be acting like Buddhas, helps us to see ourselves as a Buddha, even though we may not be acting as a Buddha. Does that make sense? Yes.
I really like this never disparaging Bodhisattva aspiration, and as we were reading it, I was thinking of metta, the practice of metta, and I was also really thinking of how this is a reminder for me to stay open to the teachings of all things.
Just with this kind of what we've learned today, I think I'm going to apply some of that to what I do every day. There's this that thought, the things you want to say and things that you have to hold your tongue. It's like, I can say, you're going to be a Buddha one day, and think that, because I deal with people that are angry all day long. They don't want to pay for their garbage. They don't want to pay for it's all free, and you have to explain to them and say, no, this is how it's going to be. And I think I could put that out there and say, okay, you can be Buddha and change that first impression. You're an asshole, and I'm going to be an asshole too. I have to bite my tongue all the time. It's like, I'm going to try that and see how that works, because that may help me to understand that, okay, that person's upset, but he's not mad at me. He's mad at the situation, to protect what I can do to change that situation. I think that'll help.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Don. I'm a teacher. I teach 24th, 5th grade students. It's so self-evident. If I treat them with disrespect, that's what I give in return. If I respect their integrity and I'm kind, that's what I give in return.
Yeah, and that's the teaching. Never disparaging Bodhisattva. So in our society, you have this idea, well, I'm not going to give you respect until you respect me. You got to respect me before I'm going to respect you. Oh, the other day disrespected me, and all of a sudden people are freaking out. That's how wars start. Okay? So, to get respect, you have to give respect. And not be attached to the outcome. I'm going to give you respect because I give you respect because that's what I do. Right? That's what Never Disparaging Bodhisattva does. He gives respect because they are a potential Buddha. Period. Because they don't treat them. They don't treat them well. Right? And now what we also want to think is who in our lives is like Never Disparaging Bodhisattva, who does tell us those things about who we are and the potential we have, and we dismiss them because of our own issues or our difficulty accepting ourselves as we are.
Yeah, so maybe you can help me with this. So back to that compassion versus being beaten. So that's an extreme example. But I really struggle with finding that balance between compassion and self-preservation, or being taken advantage of. It's such a fine line.
It's called practice. Yeah. One of the challenges with Buddhism, it's not terribly prescriptive. Well, let's see, if you do it in this formula, you have that formula together with this formula, there you go. It's practice. One of my favorite stories is about a man who was working with people coming out of prison. And he's working with this guy coming out of prison, and they're developing a friendship, and the guy's going to meditation. And one day he takes him to court. Because he's going to court with him, they're going through the metal detectors. One of the bailiffs says, "Oh, you're with that guy? Don't you know he's like a famous child molester?" He said at that moment, everything changed for him. And the compassion that he felt initially for him as someone coming back into the society from prison evaporated. And he goes, how do I get back to that point of compassion? And he goes, I don't know, but I work on it every day.
I've been realizing that balance in myself with the anger that I was feeling, is that at what point do you allow somebody else compassion, or what point do you kind of hold your own boundary? And I realized, like, if you see somebody struggling on the street and you think, I wish I could just take that person in and I wish that I could give them everything, but you know that that's not going to fix it, and you know that, you want to give so much, and you know that that's not the right thing to do. But what you can do is you have to take care of yourself first, because nobody else is going to do that. And if everybody was able to take care of themselves, then maybe there would be a little bit less, I don't know, like it's not coming out properly, but I found that when you feel like you're struggling with the question between, do I give of myself or do I protect myself? I think it's, nobody can protect yourself like you can protect yourself. Therefore, protect yourself first, and then give what you can after that.
So 2 points. One, when you're on an airplane and they say that the bags fall out of the roof, what are you supposed to do?
Take care of yourself first.
Put you on first, because if you can't breathe, you can't help anybody. Okay? So, to that point. The second point is, through our practice, I would like to think that one day I can be absolutely and utterly open and compassionate. I'm not there now. Also, too, I mean, there's a practical living life. And I have said to an ex-girlfriend once, I love you unconditionally, but I cannot live with you unconditionally. So there are distinctions between the two. Okay? There's distinctions between the two. And we also have to know what is the source of our compassion. For many years, I thought I was this really compassionate, this empath, and somehow I was like this unique purple child in the world, and wow, I'm special. And I realized that my compassion was all about trying to earn love and acceptance. It was the compassion went out of my desperation to be loved. And then when I came to understand, compassion is something very different than that. Than the difficulties I had in compassion and a lot of questions I had in compassion kind of dissolved on themselves, and the boundaries themselves made themselves manifest. I didn't even have to think about it. That's kind of the motivation or the intent of the compassion became more pure or clean. I don't know. Those words are good, those words are bad, so I don't know. I don't know if that helps. Okay, what I want to do is I want to end this Dharma talk today with a song. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing. Linnea? Okay. And I love the singing baby in the back. Mama. And of course, he sings all through the meditation. Stop. So this is a song that was written by a sensei. I can't remember. I think that Ocean Gate Sangha. So he wrote a song, a specific song for Never Disparaging Bodhisattva. And it was really cool, is the song is kind of in the style of an old Union song. So what I want to do is play that for you. And then there's a little chorus. So listen to the first hymn of the chorus, and then maybe we can sing along for the second time it goes through. Here we go.
Sorry, he was eating and nursing, so
That's why he was
he's
quiet.
falling asleep and nursing, so he got upset.
You have the whoopee.
Yeah.
You will be a Buddhist someday. Big mouth.
A holy book that has the power to remove all fear and doubt. And this book tells the story of a man who means the world to me. He could just as well have been a woman on International Women's Day. Except for nail-headed Germany, well, they call him the Bodhisattva never disparaged, the Bodhisattva never despised. And I'm making it my life's ambition to see the world through his pure eyes. Now listen carefully, because this is the chorus which you will sing the next time it's around. I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. You know it, sing. For you only know your weaknesses. I only know your strengths. I would never despise you or put you down in any way. You up the clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. I love you. Now the Bodhisattva never disparaging the countless things were past. In the time of the counter to Dharma, and he was something of an outcast. Because the monks and nuns this time, they were noted for their arrogance and vanity. And these were the folks who exercised great power and authority. But my boy, he never concerned himself if they treated him like a freak. He just battled everybody equally, and these are the words he would speak. Here's the chorus. I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. That's good. Where you only know the weaknesses, I only see your strengths. I will never despise you or put you down in any way. Because it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddhist someday. I love you. He never read the side of the scriptures much, and he only liked to practice respect. But the monks and nuns this time, they didn't mean it like you might expect. Instead, they cursed him, and they reviled him, and they wished that he would go. Because they all had self-esteem issues, like everybody else I know. So they beat him and pelted him with pugs and stones to try to drive him away. But he just run off to a safe distance, and then he turned around and said, I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. Where you only see your weaknesses, I will see your strengths. I will never despise you or put you down in any way. Because it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. I love you. And so it went on for years and years. He was the target of scorn and abuse. Still our hero, he shed no tears, nor did he ever wonder, what's the use? Until he came to the end of his natural lifespan, he lay down, fixing to die. And he heard the holy Lotus Sutra being preached up in the sky, and his life was extending for millions of years. He's living to this day. And in the pages of the Lotus Sutra, well, you still can hear him say, I would never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. Where you only see the weaknesses, I only see your strengths. I will never despise you or put down to you anyway. Because it's clear to see, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. Yes, it's clear to me, I can plainly see